Yeah.
Waiting for it to say okay. It's good. All right. I think we're all ready to go here. So thank you all for being part of this. I appreciate your patience in us with some technical difficulties we didn't expect. I'm John Sinkovich with Local Spins. I am not L. Lively. We'll try to figure out a way to fix that later. But I can say I appreciate the fact that I'm looking a little younger with L's name up there, not mine. So we have a very distinguished cast with us today. So it's great to have us on board for this session about promotions, including Cassie Benton, Shane German, Hira Lalandas, Hayes Griffin, and Randall Erno. It's great to have you guys on board, and I thank you for participating in this B-side session, which of course is a very important one considering the fact that we've gone through one of the craziest years ever in terms of trying to find ways to promote music and to promote artists who are still trying to do their thing as musicians. So I think I'll start with have each one of the panelists sort of describe their role and how they feel perhaps artists can use this opportunity to promote their work, and we'll go from there. So let's start, and maybe Shane, you can start by introducing yourself and talking a little bit about where you think things might be going along these lines.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shane German. I'm the music director at WYCE 88.1 FM in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been the music director here at this community non-commercial radio station almost 3 years. This particular year was challenging not only for artists, but also for the radio station and live venues as well. I mean, every aspect of the music industry was affected by this past year. There were times that we didn't quite know what we were going to do. We are a very small staff, and we have a team of volunteers that kept the music going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we had to just learn to adapt. And whether that was teaching people how to record from home, to do their shows, doing strict COVID protocols in here, but I think one thing it taught us is that we could adapt, and things in this industry change all the time. I mean, things that were somewhat normal 10 years ago can be non-existent now. So one of the key elements, one thing that I learned, especially in this past year, was to adapt quickly and move forward. And it really brought us new skills and made us actually a stronger radio station because of it.
Cassie, how about you? You considering you have some experience at WYCE as well.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Cassie Benton. I'm currently the assistant manager of Listening Room in a small scale venue in downtown Grand Rapids, located in Studio Park. But my background experience comes from working in commercial broadcast radio and non-commercial, specifically WYCE. And I think that this session could really help artists think about fresh ways to restart after this unexpected break, and different ways that we all together in our different areas can offer advice on how to start anew and refreshed in this industry.
Thanks, Cassie. It's interesting to see how Listening Room actually adjusted as well last summer and early fall, and providing some outdoor opportunities for live music when indoor music was really not happening anywhere. I think we're going to see a lot more of that come this spring and summer as folks feel a little bit more perhaps comfortable moving outdoors. And I think that also offers some opportunities for a lot of musicians in order to move into maybe some areas that they maybe previously were uncomfortable with. Piero, let's hear from you. Give us a little bit of background and perhaps maybe your ideas as to where artists can go with along these lines.
Great, thank you. My name is Piera Lolandes. I am an actress, journalist, digital creator, and I'm also the founder and creative director of indiewaves.com. It's a website predominantly for smaller artists. That's how it started. It started more of a microblog on Instagram. And I think with that being said, for any struggling sort of musician and how everything sort of have to like, it shifted because of COVID. My platform sort of grew a lot faster during the quarantine because a lot of the musicians had more time to reach out to blogs like mine, not only just mine, but I guess a lot of other radio stations as well. And they got more involved in the curating of content, which they wouldn't have the time for if they would be out in gigs, which was another thing that I used to do a lot. I used to cover a lot of gigs in the New York City area. That's where I'm based. So I think, like you said, the industry is always shifting and we just kind of have to like mold to that. So I think it is really, the time that we have now to sort of either be at home could be really useful for artists. They just have to know how to like reach out to blogs and websites. Mine is predominantly really small and I do predominantly feature smaller artists. I am growing into a little bit more of a bigger artist to feature because there is a huge cross promotion that can happen from having an artist who has a fan base already and having their audience go into indie waves and then see all the other smaller acts and up and coming acts that I have. So that was something very useful. And I believe that it now, thanks to the internet, like us having this webinar now, using DMs and just personal messages goes a really long way, just connecting with other journalists and people who run blogs. Everyone's up to the challenge from creating content now because we have the time. So just, it's all about just knowing who to reach out to.
Right. Mr. Hayes Griffin, good to have you on board tonight. Tell us a little bit about your experience and where things might be headed here as we move into 2021.
Yeah, it's great to see you, John, and everyone else. Piera's kind of story really resonated with me here because, first off, my name is Hayes Griffin. Nice to meet you all. I'm the former station manager at WYCE. I was there for 2 years and have been a professional musician for the previous 10, touring mostly with like bluegrass and folk acts. And now I consider myself a YouTuber and online digital content creator. And, you know, to get to your question, John, that's kind of, for me at least, that's where this COVID-19 path led, was down, you know, one of the branches of the kind of music industry, splintering off from maybe the performance side of things and going into more education, you know what I mean? And digital, like video delivery and stuff, because we have a lot of folks at home that are looking to take up new hobbies and stuff like that. So what that's really taught me is kind of the importance of a digital marketing strategy, not just for, you know, and it's not specific to online education. It will be a skill set that I think musicians in Michigan and beyond can really use to jumpstart their performance careers again as we start to move back toward live events and things like that. So like having your own little marketing strategy has really helped me because, you know, we're a bunch of individual operators now. And like Piera said, with a lot of time on our hands to make content and really curate an experience for our followers and fans and viewers and all that kind of stuff. So learning how to wield those tools, I think, can be really helpful in this scenario.
I think that's very true. And we've been talking a lot about versatility and flexibility and being able to adapt during a new environment. And certainly over the past 365 days and more, we, as musicians and just as society in general, we've had to learn how to alter our behavior and change what we do and still manage to have a career. And Randall, Erno, you bring a little bit different background to the table, but I think it's very important for folks to sort of understand kind of sort of the impact that the kind of stuff that you've been doing over the last several years. So talk a little bit about your background and where you think things might benefit an artist.
Good to see you, John. My name is Randall Erno. I run a labor staffing company called Level Up Management. I rent assets. I play in a couple bands. I play bass in a band called Biomassive and drums in another called Analog Kid. I've been loving quarantine. I gotta be honest. I think I could do this forever. I had a recording studio in Grand Rapids for a little bit, and I was never there because I was always working day jobs to support the rent, and I've just been adapting. I've been, I think my personal philosophy right now is just development. I think artists are in a place where you got to decide if you want to be Daft Punk or Justin Bieber, because if you look at someone like Bieber, they're doing everything. You know exactly what they eat every meal. But you look at someone like Daft Punk, who put out 4 albums in 28 years. They've got the mystique, and you got to decide if you want to put out super quality, mysterious, thought-ridden material, or if you want that instant and the catchy, or if you can flirt the middle ground. So that's kind of where I see the industry trending. And for myself, it's just been about personal education. I'm going back to school for my master's degree, focusing on human resources so I can take care of my employees better when the industry resurfaces. And I made a goal to produce 5 albums over quarantine. I'm on my 7th right now. And we'll see how much longer unemployment lasts. And I'll get back to you with an updated goal.
Well, it's interesting that one of the things that we've been talking about here is sort of reinvention, or maybe just changing maybe the way in which bands and artists promote themselves. Because frankly, the standard in the past has been, okay, you're going to record a new album, and now you're going to go out on tour and you're going to promote that album, and this is how you're going to promote yourself, and you're going to find ways in order to generate enthusiasm as a live act, because that's really where you're going to make your money, whether it's selling merchandise or maybe some physical CDs, and just getting the word out about what you're doing. Clearly, all of that has changed here over the last year. So what's the first priority for artists at this stage in a kind of a changing world where maybe recordings are more important in the sense that that's the only way that people are going to hear your new music? And how do you promote a recording without touring?
What I've been telling my colleagues lately is to record it now and hold out. Maybe drop some singles to keep the interest, but you know, the way that things are trending, I mean, I posted the other day that my phone's ringing a lot more now, and that's kind of how I gauge, my feelings on if the industry is coming back. And it's, there's a lot of conversations being had right now with events, and I think it's going to come back pretty quick, like you said, in one form or the other. Spring shows, outdoors, we're getting used to this now. Like, people are getting creative. So my personal advice right now would be keep people interested and stack up that like monster full length that you've always wanted to put out but never had the time for. That's my personal advice right now.
All the rest of you.
Well, I'll go from just having a lot of people reach out and getting a lot of submissions every single time someone puts a song out, especially if you're reaching out to journalists like myself, or we have writers. It's always great to do it, I want to say maybe at least a month before your song is released. It gives me enough time, because I'm predominantly one person running my business. I do have some writers and people, but for the most part, I deal with a lot of the creative side and also a lot of the admin work. So if you send me your song, let's say a month in advance, it gives me the time not to only listen to it, but maybe decide what kind of feature we can do. So along with that, just goes along with the whole marketing aspect of it, whether you have some money for it or not. Like, I prioritize paid features just because it is a lot better work-wise for me. Like, I'm not just doing a lot of the unpaid work over the paid work. If you pay me, I'm going to make sure that I have your song or the feature out by when the song is released. So something like that can be done, which is one of the ways that I've been collaborating with artists, mainly because they aren't going to play live like before. So also websites, aside from us also being able to give you articles or writing about you, playlists has been something that has been blowing up because of Spotify. There's a lot of different playlists that you can get on. And because of that, I've also seen that Spotify's just also been creating a bunch of different playlists for Spotify specifically, there's like Lorem, there's New Music Friday. There's just so many right now, but that's also a really great way of getting your songs not only heard, but it can eventually also be heard by music supervisors, which could also end up in either TV shows or movies, and just things like that. So that's also one way of getting your music heard. Now, if you're not obviously going out to shows or opening for people, I used to discover a lot of great bands solely from them being the opening act. So, but then I also know a lot of journalists sometimes don't stay or don't get there early enough for the opening act. I do, because I feel like they're just gems that a lot of other people miss out on. They just go for the main act. So live streams has also been a thing. I just don't know how popular it'll continue to be. I think there's still something about live music that will just never be quite the same as, you know, something over the internet.
I'll have to add on to that as well, since I run local spins. I have probably debuted more new music over the last year than I have in the previous 2 years combined. And that's because artists are seeking other ways to get their music out. So yeah, I would have to say a couple of weeks at least ahead of time. You know, I have a radio show on WYCE, but I also, you know, will post video roundups at local spins. And I'll also, you know, obviously be very interested in new and upcoming artists who may have new music out there that's getting some attention. So yeah, if you can find the email addresses for the, you know, publications and the websites that you are very interested in seeing, you know, expose, you know, audiences to your music, then you should do that, and definitely seek that out and make sure you get them the information in a cohesive fashion. I know that Shane and I and Cassie all have gotten submissions that are really poorly written and not very well thought out. I think if you put your best foot forward when you're emailing anybody at a radio station, at a website, at a national publication, make sure that you put your best foot forward. Make sure things are spelled correctly. Make sure you have the information in a professional looking way, and that you have a photograph or a good file, sound file available, because I think a lot of us have gotten submissions from artists that are not well thought out and are frankly kind of embarrassing. And I think it's important, if you're a professional musician, act like a professional, and definitely when you send out a press release or information about your music and you want people to listen to it, then you should be proud of it, and you should do a better job of presenting it to those of us that are sort of exposing it to the rest of the world. And I'm sure Shane and Cassie and Hayes can all attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, just you know, there are thousands of radio stations across the country. We are inundated with music. I get music sent to me from Poland, from Russia. They have found out how to submit their music, but I have, you know, how it's presented to me makes a huge difference. You know, I also have national radio promoters who help funnel the best of the best, and it's their job really to keep me on track, because I get hundreds of email submissions a day. I get thousands of physical mail packages from all over the world, and I can guarantee you that just a CDR with really bad handwriting on it is not going to get my attention. But a nicely produced, professionally manufactured CD with a one sheet, with your information on it, is going to get much more time, because there's just so much music being thrown at me. So you really want to make, really a good first impression. And if it's just a CDR thrown with chicken scratch, or, that you can't read, it just doesn't make you look like a professional musician at all. Working with promoters has been a huge benefit for me, because it's their job to go through and present. They know what I like. They know what the station sounds like. They're going to, give me all of the facts. There's download links, and there's, information. There's focus tracks. There's FCC information, which is hugely important for radio. It'll say what's not radio friendly. But a funny story is, we have a local band here called Pink Sky. have lived in Grand Rapids for 5 years. It wasn't until I was given my weekly newsletter from a national promoter, telling me that, and I saw that they were from Grand Rapids in their little bio, and that's how I figured out who Pink Sky was. Because they were professional. They submitted their music to a national radio promoter, and the national radio promoter brought their music to me. There's just so much music out there. If you can afford it in your budget, to get a national promoter to help you get your music in the hands of the thousands of radio stations that are across the country, you might have a little bit more luck than just blindly sending it, because we're in constant communication with national promoters, and they can tell you, all of the stats behind the particular artist, and what they've done before, how many Spotify streams they have, how many YouTube views. They give you all of that information in a nicely presented package. So it really does make a difference to make a good first impression.
I'm gonna butt in on you here, Shane, and kind of support what you're saying, because, like, as a musician, like, if I'm gonna frame it from the musician's standpoint here, like what Shane is saying to you, all of you musicians out there, when you're submitting your music to a radio station, that's the level of curation that you're competing with in order to kind of like rise to the top of the pile, right? Like having detailed stats and a nice looking package. So these guys like John and Cassie and Shane have said, submit your music a month in advance. But I hate to say it, folks, if you've recorded an album and put all this time in, that means you should have been thinking about your strategy for how you're going to deliver it to your local radio station 4 months before that. Do you know what I mean? So like you have to have, as a musician, you have to be really mindful and conscious of the whole process that goes into like delivering your music to these outlets. And it requires a lot of work, and there's an expectation on the other side of that organization that things should look and be presented a certain way. And I think that's something that a lot of musicians just don't know, but we're telling you now. So I think that's something to really keep in mind.
And a really great EPK or electronic press kit presented to a venue that you would want to book a show for. That's your first presentation via email about your craft and your art and your performance and your audience. And I think coming up soon, when we start to do more live shows, or even when we start scheduling outdoor live shows, and you see something that's scheduled and you want to open up for it, there's no harm in getting ready to ask the venue if the opportunity is available, and then you present your EPK and it's perfect, pristine presentation, and you have a pretty good chance.
Cassie, so what are you looking for from an opening act? What is it that makes, obviously, are you trying to mesh the styles of the headliner with the opener, so that if someone is a local act and they're saying, oh my gosh, I really like this guy and I think I would like to open for him, or are you looking for someone that has an audience who can bring in more people through the door?
Definitely, it's a happy medium between the two. Obviously, you don't want to stump for the chance to open and then have all your crew show up and then leave after you open, because that's not a great look. But we definitely want someone that shows the admiration for the headliner. You can include that in your appeal. And then also, in your social media promotion leading up to that opening performance, showing your admiration, and inviting folks to come out and enjoy a incredible show. And bonus, you'll be there. It's a little bit of both, but you don't want to upstage the headliner.
Yeah, and I actually, that's going to be one of my questions of the week at Local Spins is going to be, what's your favorite opening act? And sometimes they do overshadow. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes they do overshadow the headliner, and you go, that's how I discovered a really good band. So when you talk about promotion these days, you talk a lot about the importance of social media, which has even exploded even more over the last year. So can each of you go through what you think an artist might benefit from, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook? What is the strategy for using social media to your best advantage during this time?
I'm going to jump in first just because mine's dumb and I'll get it out of the way. But the thing that I have learned this past year is engaging video content. You know what I mean? If you're looking to promote yourself online, Elle and I were talking about this before the call, and I don't mean John L, I mean the real L. That like just sharing the Facebook event does nothing. I hate to say that. You're like casting stuff out into the void of Facebook. And you might have to pump a little bit of money into those kind of things. I hate to say it. That's how this stuff works on Facebook now. You know, they've gotten really good at suppressing your events that aren't being paid for. And you're just going to have to build that into your budget, just like Shane was talking about building in a radio promoter. Like there are these extras that you got to start accounting for. But really engaging video content can take you a long way without the money and without all of that stuff. You know, like that's the kind of thing that can get you the, you know, tens, hundreds, thousands of views that you're looking for to kind of drive traffic to your stuff. And it takes experimentation to find out what is like compelling for you to do on video and feels authentic, you know, because that's something that I didn't feel comfortable with at first, kind of like sticking my face on my selfie cam and shouting stuff on Instagram or whatever. But you know, find your authentic voice, experiment with the video thing, watch some people on TikTok or Instagram that you really like, you know what I mean, that do it well. But I think video content can really get you a long way.
Would you recommend hiring like a professional video videographer to do that, or can you do that on your own?
I'm a huge DIY guy. You know what I mean? I think some of my favorite stuff that I watch, like that I find like, you know, getting the endless scrolls on TikTok or whatever, are the real gritty, real people doing it selfie cam style. You know what I mean? Because compelling content will come through regardless of whether you're on a Samsung Galaxy S7 or whatever from like 2008. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter what you're creating it on if what you're doing is engaging. But that being said, a professional look never hurt anyone. So like I've just invested in some really basic things. Like I'm on a ring light right now that kind of like, you know, can help you out. Like there are some really low cost solutions that can give you a professional look, you know, that the average musician is just carrying around in their pocket, you know.
I'm just going to jump in with, you mentioned TikTok. I think that I'm not a huge TikTok person. I just got onto it because I feel like if you have a brand, even like mine, you have to have your feet in basically all of the little ponds that are every social media, that just every new app keeps on popping up, and you have to be on it, especially if you are a musician. If you see how viral your or any song can go on some platform like TikTok, if you have a bit or a snippet of your song that you feel like is really catchy and would do great on videos, don't wait for someone else to do it. Do it yourself. It's honestly the best thing ever. You're like, someone's not going to know what to do with it if you're not doing it yourself first. So I think DIY is not only really easy to do, not only do we have the time to do it now, and like Hayes was saying, it might be uncomfortable at first. I come from an acting background. I went to a really good school here in New York for acting. Am I an actress now? I guess yeah, if you're going to pay me to do it, sure. But I think we can all have so many labels nowadays because of how easy it is for us to just do something ourselves. We don't necessarily always have to pay someone else to do it for us unless you want to do that really great quality. But even the great quality doesn't guarantee that you're going to have the viability for any of the content that you're making. And I've also realized if there's any type of content that you like to watch, then it's most likely the type of content that you should be doing. And just add your music to it. If you're someone who also likes, I don't know, let's say you're a singer-songwriter and you're female and you like to do your makeup, you can do your makeup on camera and then maybe have your song playing over it. There's a lot of different ways that you could be not only your own model for your music, you are your brand. So I think that is something that you have to look at it yourself. It's along with you presenting not only any sort of EPK or, you know, when you're talking to either journalists or anyone, you know, putting your best foot forward comes with you being your brand. That is how you appear, how you come across. I think also knowing who you're going to be talking to. So also do your research on who you're going to be sending these letters to. Don't just send it to like a hip hop blog if your music is more singer songwriter or like indie rock, because the level of you actually getting a reply is probably going to be a lot lower. So I've also realized out of my music blog in the past year, there's been, I want to say maybe like 20 more that have popped up, because a lot of, excuse me, a lot of writers have had the time to not only write for the publications that they were writing for, but they realized that they could also do it themselves, which is how I also started Indie Waves back in 2016. You just, you know, you want to do it yourself and you don't want to have an editor in chief telling you who to write about and who not to write about. You do it yourself. So I think being a musician, there's a lot of great ways that you can promote your own music.
What other social media tips do we have out there?
I think being authentic is the number one thing that's ever worked for me. Like for instance, my band Biomassive last year, we made more money doing a GoFundMe because our van broke down while we were on our 3-day tour than we did playing 10 other shows before COVID hit. And the reason why is because we came out and we were vulnerable and we were honest about just how beat up it was and how much we tried. And I find that on my personal Facebook a lot, that I get a lot of reception for just these really long, emotional, drawn out posts. But if like my band puts out a phenomenal video of a song that I worked on for hours and video is perfectly curated, for me, it doesn't land as hard. And sometimes it's surprising that like there can be more focus on that. And I think people like, if you look at like Seth Bernard and his new GoFundMe campaign, same thing. He's like jumping in the pond, doing cold plunges and 30-degree weather and showing his vulnerability. And it kind of depends on the genre that you're in, but I think it works for me and for others. And just echoing what Hayes is saying about DIY, look at Wolfpack. Like they literally had the guy from Scary Pockets with an iPhone on stage at Madison Square Garden, and he honestly crushed it. And it was like, I believe it was shot in one take or whatever. They could have paid thousands of dollars to do that, and I feel like they made a statement in that they could do it themselves. So Biomassive, we tour with a video guy who happens to be like my best friend and protege, Danny, but we also we film stuff ourselves too. We'll just go live on Facebook and say what we have to feel. So I think there are paid tactics, and like you need to budget for them, like you guys are saying, like MPE with radio, taking a specific amount for targeted events. Like there's that side, but there's also the like branding component of promotion of like, who are you and what do you want to communicate?
Yeah, I would have to say that definitely being authentic and being sincere about what you do, but also being innovative. If you have something that you think speaks to that's different, that you think your music is different, then find a way to provide, expose that to your fans. And I think there's a way to do it in a way that I think is going to catch some attention. And I can tell you too that the stories that I run at local spins, I mean, the artists and the bands that really stand out often are the ones that simply are doing what they do in a unique way. And if you can find a way to singularly sort of stand out, that's an important thing to sort of, promote, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's on Facebook or wherever. I think it's important. And I think that really does make a difference. Cassie and Shane, do you have anything to say in terms of, as radio people or as a venue person, you probably appreciate the fact that somebody might be on social media and helping promote those shows.
I mean, we definitely take into account your following, how consistently you are engaging with your followers, which platforms you're present on. And I would say something that is definitely impressive is consistency, kind of having a plan where if you are releasing your album, you're using different ways of presenting that album in different contents. So either you get a review done and then you share that a publication reviewed your upcoming release, or if you are doing TikToks with snippets releasing like little minute sections of the new album, and then just saying that you're open to being, I don't know how to communicate this, but like open to sharing that music in person when we're allowed to, when we're able to. And yeah, I would say we look at, I guess, not necessarily numbers, but I would say how many people are engaging with your content that you consistently promote and present to everybody.
Is there a preferred platform? I mean, I find it very interesting that some artists are like Instagram artists, some folks are Facebook people, some folks are Twitter, some folks are TikTok. It strikes me that you're going to sort of limit your audience if you only pick one, but is there a preferred platform these days that artists might need to seek out?
I would say that the default is Facebook. I feel like that's a way that you are, that venues or any other type of institution that wants to kind of see what you're about, or they're going to be able to see how many followers you have, and things like that. And then that's also the way that venues at least put out events, and they can put ticket sale links, and they can gauge possibly how big the interest is in that event and things like that. So I would say Facebook is the default. However, because of everything that's gone on in the last year, it's definitely expanded where everyone has their feet in all the different mediums. But I would say Facebook is the first.
I can echo that, at least from my analytics that I've got on my own stuff too. Like Facebook, you get a lot of traffic, and then from there it's by demographic. Who do you want to access? And you have to be targeted with it. Like if you want Gen Z, TikTok. If you want millennials, Instagram. You know what I mean? Like I know those are broad strokes, but like stuff like that comes into play.
And I didn't hear from you on this one. Which social media platform are you using the most?
Talking to me? You talking to me? I'm about ready to quit them all. So how you're gonna get your music to me when I don't know what you're doing? There, you can email me or something. I don't know. I'm just kidding. We have found that we have a different demographic on Facebook. We have a different demographic on Instagram, and a different demographic on Twitter. And it's just, but you still need to get your messaging out and what you're doing. So depending on the platform that we're using, it will determine kind of what kind of reception we're getting, how much interaction we're getting, whether or not the artist, if the artist tags us and says, "Thank you so much, WYCE, for playing our latest song," or whatever, and they share it on their story, that's a completely different thing than you're gonna maybe go to our YouTube page and watch a 30-minute, one-on-one session with Charlie Crockett. So there's different, we utilize the different platforms in different ways, but we still cast the widest net possible to get our content out in multiple avenues.
what are the basics that an artist needs to start with when they're trying to promote what they do? I've always found this interesting. I think, you know, like every artist needs to have an EPK. I think every artist should be prepared to have a press release of some kind or a bio. I mean, you got to have a good bio. It really frustrates me as a journalist to have to go to a Facebook page for a band or an artist and see them promoting themselves as, you know, their music is, you know, sweet honey. Well, I'm sorry, but that means nothing to me. And as a programmer, as a journalist, as someone who covers the business, I want to know how you describe your music, and I want it to be done without kind of silly names and silly descriptions. I think, you know, you can be clever about it, but I think you still need to let people know exactly the kind of music that you're playing so that you can develop an audience and cultivate an audience. So what are the basics that you think artists need to start out with in order to present their band or their music in the best possible way? Let's start with Hayes.
I got some really good advice from a friend and fellow musician a couple years ago. When, you know, as I grew into being a professional musician, like taking it, like doing my own thing full time or whatever, he was like, it's a business. You need to write a business plan. You need to sit down and actually write a business plan. Like, and obviously that's going to be, it's not going to sound the same for a musician as it is for, you know, a fried chicken restaurant or something like that. You know what I mean? So you have to like kind of treat the guidelines for what a traditional business plan is a little liberally, but just kind of like having a mission statement, coming up with a list of descriptive words for your music, and like stealing them from honestly other musicians that you like and that sound like you know what I mean? But literally treating it like a business and having all of those, you have to conceptualize yourself. You have to be completely mindful of who you are and what you want to do. You know, Randall was talking about some of these like mindful things that musicians need to like kind of be aware of in order to kind of be authentic, you know, to give an authentic presentation. But in order to do that, you have to know who you are and what you're doing, and a business plan will line that out for you. So kind of like, and what that kind of gets you is what Piera has talked about some a little bit, is like your brand, you know what I mean? And like, having a business plan can kind of steer some of these elements that you need to think about, like what colors do I want to use on my graphics, and what style of videos do I want, you know what I mean? Because if you're like a, you know, grunge band, you don't want really professional looking videos or whatever, you know what I mean? Like yeah. So to be able to conceptualize these things, I think you need to have a really solid business plan and just know who you are and what you're trying to do.
What other great suggestions do we have out there for people starting out and finding a way to sort of promote what they do?
Definitely, what Hayes was saying, you have to know what you're doing and who you are, right? Like what kind of music you want to do. Like you can't be like, let's say Bruno Mars and a Jay-Z at the same time, even if like that's, you kind of have to decide. Just kind of like when I started Indie Waves, I had to decide like what your niche audience is going to be. That's something that I've realized it was really hard at first. Like everything else, the hardest thing is to just start, and somehow you'll probably end up being something a little different than what you had in mind. And that's okay sometimes too. But the first thing is know who you are. Like from that goes on to like what you're going to look like, how you're going to present yourself. Again, Hayes was saying, if you are like a grunge band, you're not going to have these beautiful, colorful pictures that might not fit into your aesthetic. So maybe play around with that as well. And the cool part about that is that you are your own boss. If you tried doing something and it didn't really stick the first time, it's totally okay. Who's to say you can't switch it up? And you were a rapper and that really wasn't your thing and it didn't really go that well. That's great. So what other kind of music do you like to do? Maybe try being a singer-songwriter. Eventually, somewhere along the line, you could end up being like a somewhat of a singer songwriter who has rap sort of notions somewhere in your music, and that's what's gonna make you unique. That is what makes everyone stand out, is when you're not trying to be somebody else. Yes, of course, you're going to have a lot of influences, but you can always make it your own. So definitely being true to who you are. But even if that's a little hard at first, if you're an artist who might not know exactly who you want to reach to begin with, I'm not sure if like that might happen. I know it happened to me in acting. If you have a very distinctive look, I think also like John was saying, being a journalist and not wanting to do a lot of the work because we do get so many submissions. Do the work for us, like tell us who you sound like. If you sound like Bruno Mars had a baby with I don't know any other artist, then tell us that. Then we can somewhat be like, okay, you got my attention. Like I want to know if you really do sound like Bruno Mars had a baby with. I really can't think of anyone else. I want to say JC again, like if they had a baby and your music sounds like that, like let me know. And then maybe the way that you look might be even more interesting. Because I'd be like, wow, you look so put together, but somehow you sound like, Jay-Z and Bruno Mars had a baby. Like, okay, you're going to make me want to, you've already done half of the work for me. And in acting, it was the same way. When I walked into an audition, I have a very distinctive look. So I couldn't necessarily, I knew what roles I can go and audition for, and I knew which ones I couldn't. And then the ones that I couldn't get, I just try to take the positive sort of criticism that you might take. Like, so your music might not be everyone's cup of tea. That's totally okay. Just take the good and then kind of leave the bad, I guess, unless it's constructive criticism, then yes, maybe tweak a couple of things and try to not confuse, one, your audience, and then two, the people that you're submitting your music to. So I think our attention spans nowadays has gone down to almost nothing. So the more work you do for us, in a sense, the better, and the better of a response you're probably going to get.
Yeah, if you can't describe your music, then you are probably maybe hitting down the wrong path. I also think it's really important to run it. When you present your music or your songs, you can run it past your friends, run it past other musicians who are experts in this field, who you really like. Look at what other musicians are doing and kind of emulate what they're doing. But don't be afraid. Your music is your art. Don't be afraid to share it with other people first before you throw it out to the public. And at the same time, that same thing is true with the description of what your band is. Or ask your friends, ask other musicians, what is it that makes my music stand out, and is this something that I should be promoting? Because if you're afraid to share that with your friends and other musicians, then it may not be ready for prime time. And I think it's really important for you to get that kind of feedback before you jump into the fire, so to speak. And I think it really will help you sort of focus what you're all about. And I think that's really important. And I think since we're sort of getting near the end here, if there are any questions out there from the folks that are listening in, what is it that you'd like to hear from these panelists in terms of ways you want to promote your own music? So please message us over here, and we'll make sure we get some answers to that. So I want to hear from Shane and Cassie and Randall on this point as well.
Yeah, I was gonna hop in and mention the letting people listen to your music, so that you can get those descriptive words for your bio, and then you put them in your EPK. Definitely don't hide your art, because if you hide it, then it's just yours and it's not out there for the world to enjoy and everyone else to support. So definitely, if you need some words, use your hive mind and have everybody else help you out with that.
Well, one thing I would add to that, John, is one of my favorite things from Martin Atkins in the book Welcome to the Music Industry, You're Effed. He says do the opposite. So if TikTok's the thing that's trendy, send a postcard. Things like that. And I kind of look at that with music feedback too. Like sometimes I just put out something I'm so proud of, I get 0 results. So I've kind of been comparing it to like your birthday party when you're past your 30s, where you still care but others don't. But what can you do to resolve that? You actually call other people on their birthday and speak with them and wish them a happy birthday. So lately I've been doing that. Like if someone I know puts out a good record, I will call them. They will, of course, not answer because it's 2021 and we didn't schedule it. And then they'll text me like, you know, the day later and saying, "Hey, I missed your call. What's up?" And then I'll just call them again, and tell them like, "Your album is great, and I love it, and here's why. And I think this is where you missed, and I think this is where you succeeded. And I want you to know I spent the time doing it because I care about your art." And in like less than a year of doing that, I have this entire network of my friends that we're sending each other tracks now in advance and getting really, really good feedback from it. So that's my 2 cents on it. Do the opposite and don't celebrate your birthday after you're 30.
Yeah, I can go along with that. It's been a long time since my 30th birthday. Shane, any suggestions along these lines?
You know, it's okay to wait too. You don't, if it's not ready for prime time, you don't need to inundate the marketplace with a bunch of demos that don't put you in the best light. Um, you know, it's I think we're so used to like just throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks, but if you wait and present something that you're really proud of, that sounds good, that's professionally produced, you're probably going to get a lot more interest in it because you waited until it was ready. And you know, being nice in this industry actually does go a long way. I get handwritten letters thanking the station for playing them. I get Christmas cards from artists that we've supported over the years. Those types of things, they may seem small, but it makes a huge difference. It forms a connection in a way because we're so inundated with data and files and MP3s and waves, and when you can break out of that and actually have a personal interaction with an artist, it really does go a long way. So you can wait, you can present professionally, make sure that you're ready, and nobody likes a diva. Nobody wants to deal with anyone who feels that they're entitled to something. um you know we're all trying our best. The artists are trying our best, the stations are trying our best, promoters are trying their best, venues are we're all trying our best. So being nice and professional and courteous actually goes a long way, and you'll be remembered for that behavior. And more possibilities are bound to come to you because you have a professional outlook, and you're just a nice person. Nobody likes a diva or a jerk. They just don't.
Yeah, it goes a long ways. You're absolutely right. Being complimentary and responding when you're supposed to, and always taking the upper sort of road is always the way to go. And I think it really, believe me, I remember those folks as well. And the truly professional bands that do a good job with that, those are the bands that do the best and are frankly are the ones that you should be emulating. And if there's a band out there that you think is doing a great job of promoting themselves and marketing and that kind of thing, emulate what they do, because they are successful because they've done their homework, they've been courteous, they've established relationships with the people that they need to establish relationships with, and it's important to know that. So Paul has a great question, and it's something we haven't really dealt with too much here tonight, and that is, when do you get to the point when you should hire a publicist or hire a public relations firm? He says he's a lead vocalist and bassist for a Detroit area heavy metal band called Theandric. We are currently recording a 4-song EP with hopes to promote it locally and beyond. We want to partner with an effective PR firm, person, or team to get the message out there. And we recognize that our band budget needs to provide for paid promotional assistance. Can you recommend any particular person or firm? I don't know if we want to do that, but I wonder at what stage do bands go out and seek that kind of assistance? Because in these days we are inundated with an awful lot of of artists, and sometimes it does help to have professional assistance. Somebody jump.
Hey, Paul. I played in metal bands for years, and if I'm allowed to, I will suggest someone. You should talk to Alfonso Seville from the band Heartsick. He's been at it for 20 years. They used to be called No Life. They're phenomenal. He's one of the hardest working people in the industry, and just connecting with him, he's just such a kind guy, and I'm sure he would help you out. To specifically answer your question, you just have to be realistic about like your band budget or your personal resources together. And someone else in the chat was talking about this too, of like, okay, so you guys are mentioning all these things that have paid resources to it. So my personal mindset right now is every musician needs to get into sync as quickly as possible. There's so much money in it. It's a trending upwards industry. I recently joined taxi.com, which is so good. It's a couple $100 to join. You pay $5 per track you submit, but they give you feedback on every track that you submit, and they have every genre possible. To give you an example, I submitted, we did an 80s cover of the song There's Always Something There to Remind You. If we landed, it's $28,000 paid out. So with that, we would allocate that to the radio promotions, the PR, things like that. So I think it like comes down to a personal decision. As a musician, either like you're going to be equity partners with your band, and you guys are all going to throw in your personal revenue and establish that agreement amongst yourselves, or you have to find ways to generate that money. And as you know, it's not happening with shows right now. So to me, sync is the wild, wild west right now for musicians.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, Google is also really great to just search for specific genre for PR. I do a lot of indie, more like rock music, so I can't personally recommend someone who would do PR for a metal rock band. But if you Google it, you'll probably find someone. And again, it just depends on how much you're willing to spend and what your budget is, because a lot of PRs don't come cheap. So you want to make sure that not only is your music ready for it to be promoted in that kind of level, and that is the best way that you can kind of get more of a bang for your buck kind of deal. And again, a lot of the DIY, because I think Emily had also a question about how you can basically get your music to give you more for what you're spending. I mean, everyone's time is valuable and time is money. And Muso Soup is another great way. I guess it's another, like Submit Hub can also help you find, I guess, more blogs specific to your genre. And I don't use Submit Hub personally, but I'm not sure if it's very affordable. But you can also make sure that however much your budget is, you're allocating it not just for like one PR, but maybe a couple of different other websites. So not only one person is kind of doing all the work for you.
I would also say what I mentioned earlier, and that is if there's a band in your genre that you really respect and you really like what they do, ask them. They've probably had experience with some of the publicists and some of the PR firms that have done a good job for them. There certainly are a number of them out there, but I think it's really helpful to try to get some advice from the band in your genre. Caitlin asks that she's heard conflicting advice from a number of sources that we should not compare our original music to other popular artists. But I saw a general agreement when Piera said this is helpful in a submission, just confirming you think this is helpful. I don't know about comparing yourself to another artist. I think it's important if you think your sound is similar to another artist, or at least in the same general area stylistically, it's important for us as journalists and as arbiters of what's happening in radio and elsewhere, to be able to understand where you're coming from. So it's not necessarily saying, I'm the new, whatever. It's a matter of trying to give other people who may not have ever heard of you before a better understanding of where your music is coming from.
What I get a lot on the CDs that I get, there's usually a sticker on the front, and it's RIYL. It's recommended if you like. So recommended if you like Adele, Beyonce, whatever. And they give you, it's recommended if you like these artists. So you can you can really pare it down and be like, recommended if you like Panic at the Disco, recommended if you like Joni Mitchell, recommended if you like, and you kind of can gauge what's going to be contained on the CD just by the RIYL sticker. It's just kind of because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of musicians that you could sound like. So paring it down just to say recommended if you like these artists. You don't have to say I sound like Beyonce. You don't have to say that, but you can say it's, if you like Beyonce, you could like this. You're not saying that you sound just like Beyonce. You're saying recommended if you like this particular artist.
That's a good point. Someone mentioned sync. So someone needs to know, it's not me. Someone needs to know, how is that a website, a platform? Who brought that up, and it needs a little more detail.
I think I brought it up. So sync licensing is selling your music to films, TV, commercials, etc. The website I mentioned is taxi.com. There's a bunch of others, and there's intermediaries too. And I think some of it connects to what the WYCE folks have said too, is like sometimes, finding that intermediary to pitch it and like getting you one step closer to the funnel. But yeah, there's so many great, like I was intimidated to do it. Like, I gotta be honest, like I've thought about this for the last 20 years, and I never did it until quarantine. And then I just dove in really hard, and it's super fun as a producer. Like, I've been writing songs literally based on sync requests. Like, we need an emotional piano motif. Well, cool. That's what I'm going to do the next time I go into my studio. So I think it can actually be an inspiring creative process, not even just a monetary mission.
Yeah, very good point. So someone asks, Chesney asks, are there any tips for approaching a PR firm or person as a brand new band planning a debut release? Someone pitch in here.
I think you'd be best off. Someone mentioned Submit Hub. I think that's a good starting place for you rather than hiring somebody explicitly. And someone addressed how much it costs. It can be less than $1 a submission to do that. And I was having a great talk with Amber Beist from the Accidentals Michigan Legend last week. And she was running some things by me, and hopefully she doesn't mind me saying this. One tip that she gave me is use Submit Hub to see if something lands before you pitch it to someone like Shane. If it doesn't hit within that website, then it's probably not going to hit on the radio. So I loved that advice from her. Took it to heart.
And also, just don't be personally offended when that happens, and don't let it get you down. That's one thing that I'll say as a musician too. Like, you have to fall on your face and fail at this process a million times before you get that one hit. You know what I mean? And you're on the radio somewhere. So just keep at it. For agreement style. Don't take anything personally.
I love that book, by the way.
If you're asking for feedback from somebody, don't get mad when they actually give you honest feedback. I think, all of us, look, I was a songwriter and I've recorded albums and done my music thing over the years as well. And I wish somebody would have told me a couple of times that maybe you should leave this track off of an album. It would,
Preach.
It's not necessarily, telling you that you suck. It's that, you need that kind of feedback in order to take the next step and get better at what you do. All of us want to be better at what we do. And it takes editing, it takes time, it takes other people's feedback. I didn't become a reporter and a journalist and a writer overnight. It took years to really develop the talent and the things that I do now to get to that stage. And all of us are in that same boat. You know, you have to learn. It's a learning process. And I think all of you folks here tonight, Cassie, Shane, Piera, Hayes, Randall, you've done a great job of educating us tonight on some of the options that artists have out there. And I really want to thank all of the folks that were out there tonight and listening in. And this will be available online after this is all over with. So thank you all for taking the time. It's really important for professionals like you to sort of support and lift up the music scene that we've got here in Michigan. And I think it's amazing to me to see the sort of support and the collaborative efforts that we see from day to day and year to year here. And especially during this pandemic, I'm just like, my heart just like bursts with joy to see the kind of support and the kind of efforts that folks are making to try to make sure that music stays alive. And eventually live music will be back in some manner, shape, or form. And I think you folks have all helped do that. So thank you so much. Thanks to all the folks at Michigan Music Alliance, and good night to all of you.
Thanks, John.
Great, John.
Take care.